It's the 7th day of the 7th month of the year.
Oh,
yeah. Did that math all on my own. It's the 7th of July. It's Thursday. It's Jesperson and Hicks with you. Real Talk coming to you live streaming on YouTube and the Mixlr audio app or later on demand wherever you download your podcasts. Thanks for joining us. We've got a great show in store coming up in just a moment. We'll talk to and we'll talk present tense, disqualified Conservative Party leadership candidate Patrick Brown, although who knows what's going to happen. Who knows what's going to happen because he's retained high-powered counsel, Marie Henein, who was, you may remember, the litigator, probably, I would say, the most high-profile criminal defense lawyer in the country from Henein Hutchison LLP. That's Patrick Brown's lawyer. She wrote a letter, a couple of letters, as a matter of fact, just yesterday to the Conservative Party of Canada, to different people with the appeals committee. We'll get into the weeds with Mr. Brown in just a second, saying he is engaged in absolutely no misconduct. If you're going, wait, hang on a second, I haven't listened to Real Talk in a couple days. What the hell are you guys talking about? Maybe a bit of background in just a second, but essentially 2 overnights ago, so let's call it like 36 hours ago, Patrick Brown finds out he's disqualified from the Conservative Party leadership race. Yeah. And nobody knows why. There's allegations that there were serious problems with the finances of his campaign. And a lot of people that are jumping to Patrick Brown's defense are saying that this reeks. This is a hit job. This is a smear campaign. And so Marie Henein, his lawyer, says, the result of this conduct, his disqualification, she's writing this to the party, is the disenfranchisement of tens of thousands of Canadians that Mr. Brown and his campaign have brought into the party to renew it, to present a credible political alternative, says the letter, says Marie Henein and Alex Smith, her co-counsel. Mr. Brown is not prepared to accept your attempt to disenfranchise the important voice of new Canadians in this party. So that's where we go from here. Looking forward to talking to him coming up in, call it 5 minutes time. And then a little bit later on in the program, we'll talk to Dr. Duane Bratt, political scientist out of the city of Calgary. He's going to join us. Oh, yeah, overnight as well, Britain's Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, says he's out. He's pulling the, he's not pulling it, but he's announced he's resigning, but he's going to stay on until his successor is chosen. But he's on his way out. This amid what is one of the more remarkable collapses in support in can I say modern political history? Let me get to Dr. Bratt on this and say what he thinks, but put it this way. Since, a couple of days ago, since Tuesday, Prime Minister Johnson has lost more than 50 MPs, more than 50 government members have resigned in the last 48 hours. So this has been a total collapse of Boris Johnson's popularity and support. So he's on his way out. What does this mean for Britain? I was going to say, what does this mean for Europe? I mean, he pulled Britain out of the EU. You may remember this. This has, I think, more to do with these the ethical concerns, the parties he was throwing through COVID, and the fact, he was fined by police. People are pissed off. So we'll get into this with Dr. Bratt. What does this all mean? And we'll ask Duane to comment on Patrick Brown and everything else. I don't know what Patrick Brown's going to tell us. I don't know what he's going to say a few minutes from right now. So we'll wait to see what direction our second interview of the show goes in. We're also going to get to some of your emails to talk at RyanJesperson.com. We're going to talk about the news of the day, what's happening. Of course, we're just a day away from the weekend as well. How's everybody feeling? How's everybody doing through these summer months? You feeling good?
Summer? It's another beautiful day.
It does feel like, yeah. I know, it's been kind of a weird kickoff to the summer, hey?
Speaking of kickoff, Elks game tonight, and my wife was like, do you play in rain? We do play in rain, but...
You're talking Edmonton Elks, CFL?
Yeah. But if there's thunder, lightning, electrical storm, it will be delayed or canceled. So I don't know. It hasn't felt like summer yet.
It's been a wild few weeks, and there will be people like our West Coast audience that'll be listening in right now saying, yeah, welcome to our world. It's like this all the time. But when you live in frigid minus 40 through the winter...
We need our 2 months of sun.
You look to what is it like? It's like the 10 weeks, maybe let's call it 12 weeks, sort of like mid-June to mid-September.
Yeah.
And we basically expect 28 degrees and sunny every single day, no precipitation, please and thank you.
Yes.
Although farmers and wild firefighters would say, well, we're not so sure about that. Farmers always have to find that sweet spot.
Yeah.
They need enough rain for the crops to do well, but not too much rain for the crops to get drowned out. They don't want hail. They don't want any of that.
But I do
the
feel
wildfire
good
stuff a little different.
for the firefighters, because they've had a rough 2-3 years here, so they need a break.
Yeah, no kidding. The trends have been up there, and it's something that not to say that there aren't some wildfires burning, but we mentioned this on the show the other day. It
has to help.
It's so-called wildfire season, and you don't see people sounding the alarms and saying, in Western Canada right now, you'll see BC, Saskatchewan, maybe Saskatchewan a little bit, Alberta. People say, there's currently 189 wildfires burning, and people are just going, geez, and summer plans or routes are being diverted and things like that. It just hasn't been that way.
The other thing about the beginning of our summer is usually at the end we get the smoky weeks because of all the fires, right? So maybe we'll.
Oh, is that what it is? It's the fires, John. Yeah, it's the fires that make all the late August nights so smoky. This show is presented by our friends at Bitcoin Well, who want to remind you that it takes just a couple of seconds to set up your online banking. If you want to find the fastest, safest way to buy Bitcoin online, you can learn why working with Bitcoin Well is the best way to do it by checking out their website. It takes a couple minutes to set up on the first buy, and then every purchase after that can be done directly from your banking app. It's the ultimate one-touch Bitcoin buying experience. You can sign up to buy with e-transfer at bitcoinwell.com today. Not telling you to buy, not telling you to sell, not telling you not to buy, just telling you if you have questions, you want to make it nice and easy. We recommend the team at Bitcoin Well. You'll find them at the top of the sponsors page on our website, ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Always love knowing our live audience is here with us. We keep an eye on our hashtag RealTalkRJ. We keep an eye on the live chat on YouTube, and that's a great way for you to interact with us through the show and oftentimes, sort of have a say in maybe where these questions go, where the interview goes. I love this from Jillian, who says, Marie Hennen? Oh, he's going to be back in this race. Yeah, everybody's got a lot of faith in Marie Hennen. By the way, if you missed our interview with her, you can find it. It was our 1-year anniversary show. I know that I'm already sitting here pumping our past content. We'll get to Patrick Brown in just a second, but that was November 23rd of 2021. So, half a year ago or so, a little bit more than half a year ago, November 23rd, 2021, that was when Malcolm Gladwell and Marie Hennen joined us. It was a hell of a show, and she is just a remarkable person and obviously has done some pretty high-profile work across the country. I do see some people making comparisons, some interesting parallels between Britain's prime minister and Alberta's premier right now, saying, isn't this interesting? Both of them kind of embattled governments through COVID, both of them with allegations, accusations, or proof that there was boozing and partying with their governments through COVID when restrictions were in place, when members of the public weren't able to gather. And now both of them, previously quite popular conservative politicians, both on their way out. Does the parallel fit? Does Boris equal Jason? I mean, Jason would love that. Premier Kenney would love that. Obviously, I think BoJo is a little higher profile, but are the stories similar? We'll ask Dr. Duane Bratt in just a second. Patrick Brown is going to be joining us in just a second. Team setting him up right now. I'm really interested to see where this is going to go, what he's going to tell us. Of course, we're doing this live. It's about 10:40 his time. It's 10:40 Eastern as we record this, 8:40 Mountain Time, and these developments are happening kind of by the hour. In other words, the story could be different now than it was an hour ago. And it's probably dramatically different than it was 48 hours ago when Mr. Brown was still in the race. If you check out his social media, it's pretty interesting. You check out his account on Twitter, and you got Patrick Brown ONT, Patrick Brown Ontario, and you look up to just a couple of days ago, his campaign is talking about where they're going, who they're talking about. The campaign stops. Everything's going great. And then all of a sudden, boom, disqualified. An announcement that came out essentially late Tuesday night, I'm sure catching Mr. Brown himself, the candidate, by surprise. He's a former MP. He's the former leader of the Ontario PCs, the mayor of Brampton. He's been around politics a long time. Right now, making his Real Talk debut. We appreciate Patrick Brown joining us live on this Thursday morning. Thanks for making time for us. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, well, this kind of came out of nowhere. I remember I was up late. I'm always up late. Night owl. It was late Tuesday night. All of a sudden, Patrick Brown disqualified. We're going, wait a second, what's going on? And there's kind of, I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth or editorialize this too much, but it seemed to be sort of ambiguous or at least subtle allegations that there were serious problems with your campaign's finances, but no hard details. Where are you at right now, about 48 hours after the fact? Less than that.
We still don't have any details. That we were told that it was an anonymous allegation that someone who was working on my campaign was being paid by a business. And the rules are, if it's a business is paying you, that you you can't volunteer for a campaign during work hours. And so if we knew the information, we could investigate it. But because the party didn't give us any details, we really felt this was it really used as a justification for a disqualification. We knew we were making the Pierre Poilievre campaign very uncomfortable. And he is the establishment choice. We had signed up over 150,000 plus new members. To put that in context, the previous leader, Aaron O'Toole, had signed up 20,000 in his successful campaign. So we really galvanized communities that were not necessarily part of the Conservative family, cultural communities, organized labor. We were expanding the reach of the Conservative family. And it made Pierre Poilievre nervous because he knew his grip on this leadership was becoming tenuous. And so, I know for a fact that this was Pierre's campaign pushing this. They celebrated when I was disqualified because this essentially makes it a coronation for them. And that's not good for democracy to have 150,000 Canadians disenfranchised.
How do you know for a fact that Pierre Poilievre or his campaign is involved in this?
So a member of their campaign team told John Reynolds, who's my campaign co-chair, he is a former party leader, a longtime British Columbia MP, and he was called by the Poilievre campaign saying that if Patrick gets disqualified, we're going to get him disqualified. Will you join our campaign? And this was only a few days before. And John, he was Stephen Harper's campaign chair when he ran for the leader. John has a ton of credibility. And clearly it was the Poilievre supporters on Leoc that were the ones pushing this. It was not a clear decision of Leoc. It was a split decision. We feel this is wrong. And Pierre, unfortunately, has had a history of this type of behavior. They got Ed Fast fired as finance critic for his criticism of Pierre's bizarre cryptocurrency policy. Michelle Rempel-Garner, who's my campaign co-chair, they had Pierre supportive MPs threatened to have her kicked out of caucus for her criticism of Pierre. So, I'm not surprised by the tactics that Pierre Poilievre's campaign has engaged in. I just don't believe the scorched earth approach is how you bring a party together.
I have I very rarely write questions down for interviews. For you, I have written questions down because I want to make sure I don't. And I do have Ed Fast's name written down here. That was about a month ago, if I remember correctly, that happened. Is a relatively popular and longtime MP out of Abbotsford, BC, right? Lower Mainland, and the Conservative finance critic who I guess technically resigned after he was facing this criticism, but he went on the record and had comments that kind of flew in the face of Mr. Poilievre's fiscal policy, essentially. And a lot of people thought that was pretty interesting to see pressure within the party a month ago from a guy who's not yet the leader of the party. And maybe you'll take issue with me using the word yet, but he's not the leader of the party, Pierre Poilievre, at least at the time. And Mr. Fast's departure from that opposition role, that critic role, pretty significant with regards to sending a message to not just card-carrying Conservative members, but to Canadians about how the party itself is approaching this leadership race and its future direction.
I think clearly it's showing that Pierre doesn't accept dissent. I have challenged him again and again in this leadership race. I challenged him like Ed Fast did on his cryptocurrency policy. And frankly, if we listened to Pierre Poilievre's advice on Bitcoin, everyone would have lost 60% of their investment. He's financially illiterate. I've challenged him on his press conference where he said he was going to ban all vaccine mandates, even for childhood vaccines like smallpox and polio and measles. It's one thing to want to end mandates for COVID-19, but the thought that we would be diminishing access to childhood vaccines it flies in the face of science and sound medical advice. I've criticized him for his the video of him visiting Pat King, who's a known white supremacist. I call out hate. I call out intolerance. And I know that makes the Poilievre camp uncomfortable because I have not shied away from my criticism. And Ryan, I think it's important for the Conservative Party to test our leaders. And I really believe if Pierre Poilievre turns the Conservative Party into a replica of the Ted Cruz Texas Republicans, this is going to be an electoral train wreck, and it will be a gift to Justin Trudeau. And I don't want to see the Liberals reelected, and that's why I'm so passionate about this. I don't want to give them a free election. I really believe a candidate with outlandish positions, extreme positions, such as Pierre, would give Justin Trudeau the easiest election he's ever had.
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole situation is a gift to the Prime Minister, quite frankly, or to any party that's not the Conservative Party of Canada. To be clear, one of the allegations has been that a member of your staff with the city of Brampton, somebody from the Brampton mayor's office, is working on your campaign during so-called work hours. Do you deny that?
Absolutely, we deny that. That allegation came from Rebel Media, who obviously Pierre, they're an extension of the Poilievre campaign, and they made an allegation. I've been very critical of Rebel Media. I don't consider them media. I consider them extreme activists. And they made an allegation that there was members of my staff working on my campaign. We told the party in regards to the Rebel Media complaint, if they wanted a letter from the city HR, we have a rule at City Hall. Anyone that wants to volunteer on the evenings or the weekends or when they're not working, they're entitled to be involved in whatever political party they want to, just not during work hours. And if anyone does want to go to a party event during work hours, they have to take unpaid time off work. And I can tell you, anyone that came to support my campaign, they did so on their own time, not on city time.
So as far as you're concerned, Patrick, are you still a contender in this leadership race? Like, where's your head at? I mean, I know your lawyers are appealing. We read a portion of Marie Hennon's letter. She sent two of them, she and her co-counsel that have sent. One of them said to the party, you better make sure, these are my words, you better make sure that you're hanging on to all your WhatsApp messages, texts, emails. We're going to want to see them all. Same goes with correspondence to the Poilievre camp. And then they basically said, you are not prepared. Patrick Brown is not prepared to accept the party's attempt to disenfranchise the important voice of new Canadians in this party. Are you still in this race with regards to where your mindset is at?
So let me say, if I'm in this race, I can win it. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm disqualified. I believe that our distribution of membership was very effective. I had my greatest membership sales in urban Canada, where they had the smallest Conservative ridings. And, I look at Pierre's membership sales. He had the worst distribution of all the campaigns. He sold his memberships largely in large rural Conservative ridings. And so he had a difficult pathway to victory. I was winning all the urban centers. I was doing very well in Ontario. Jean Charest was doing very well in Quebec, and it made it a difficult electoral map for Pierre. And so I know political parties are private clubs. To appeal a decision of a political party, there's a very high threshold. But right now, my legal team is doing their research to determine if there is a path forward. And hopefully we're going to have a better understanding that very soon.
Yeah, most people probably realize this, but I do think it's worth mentioning that math matters in this leadership race, right? And so if you sell a certain number of memberships or see certain support from some communities, let's say in the Maritimes or let's say in different parts of Canada, not on the prairies, they're weighted differently, right? I think it's worth mentioning that to people. If Pierre Poilievre says he sold 310,000 memberships, you say you've sold 150,000, it is relevant where those memberships were sold.
And the largest membership ridings in the country are in BC and Alberta. And so there's 120,000 plus members in Alberta. There's 99,000 members in British Columbia. So you have some very large rural riding associations in those two provinces. And so it's led to a bad distribution of memberships for Pierre. And it's one of the reasons I believe this drastic step was taken.
Yeah, so it must be, I'll be honest, like people like me have probably been pissing you off. And I do it inadvertently. I've been saying in my interviews, I'll say things like the perceived front runner or the front runner of the Conservative. And then I try to catch myself, Patrick. I go, I'm not sure if I should be calling Pierre Poilievre like that all the time because the vote's not done. The dust hasn't settled. People don't know how it's going to go. But he has been, right, portrayed and perceived by pundits and members of the public as the front runner in this race. Has your mindset the entire time been that you are indeed the front runner, or you're at least following a playbook to win? How would you characterize the Patrick Brown leadership campaign to this point? You've already commented on the membership sales, but with regards to who you were drawing into the new party, where you were drawing your support from, and what the game plan looked like leading up to that vote, where were you at? Do you perceive yourself to be the heir apparent, so to speak?
So my mindset, and I've won a leadership before, so I've done this in Ontario, where I took on the party establishment and won. My mindset was that if Pierre didn't win this on the first ballot, there was no path to victory for him, because the other campaigns largely were very critical of Pierre. We were largely, with the exception of Roman Baber, who's had a small campaign, the other campaigns, other large campaigns, were largely critical of Pierre. And that's why I felt very good that this leadership would follow the precedent of previous leaderships. And the last three leaderships, the front runner, you saw this with Aaron O'Toole, you saw this with Andrew Scheer. The front runner didn't win. The person who was perceived to be the front runner didn't win. And that's what happens when there's multiple ballots. It's about who has the most down ballot support. And I just didn't believe Pierre had any significant down ballot support.
So how far are you prepared to take this?
So I want to fight on behalf of the 150,000 Canadians who have been disenfranchised, but I'm mindful that political parties are private clubs. And so I need to understand how viable this legal challenge is. But I certainly am not going to shy away. I'm going to speak up and point out, well, what was done was egregious. And, Ryan, I'm not a traditional conservative. I know I made some of the party establishment feel uncomfortable. I criticize them for their support of Bill 21 in Quebec in the last election, which I thought was wrong because no one should lose their job based on their faith. I said the party was wrong on the vote on condemning Islamophobia. We should condemn hate against any faith, regardless which faith that is, because I support religious freedom. I've said that I support a woman's right to choose, that I would march in pride parades because love is love is love. And there are some conservatives, when they hear a conservative like me speak in a fiscally conservative manner, but a socially liberal manner, that they feel that, that is a version of conservatism that they don't like.
Yeah, it's fair. And I think it's an obvious statement to make that leadership races, regardless of the party, regardless of the jurisdiction for that matter, whether provincial, federal, what have you, that they are an opportunity to, in a sense, maybe not totally rebrand a party, but it does indicate a potentially a new direction that a party might take, right? A new leader. That's the whole point. They infuse new energy. They maybe create some new ideas or some new fervor, some new support, right? I'm seeing this move here. Your disqualification described by some, including conservative columnists, which must, I would imagine, mean a little bit more to you when the right-wingers behind keyboards are supporting you. They're calling this an indictment on the party. People are saying this is a bad look for the Conservative Party. The party's shooting itself in the foot. Party's cannibalizing itself. Nobody better than Conservative Party in beating itself. How about this? The former leader of the Alberta NDP. Did you see this, Patrick? Brian Mason? Brian Mason, the former leader. I mean, he was a senior. He handed off the party to Rachel Notley, who then went on to form government. Brian Mason's been a big figure in progressive politics in Alberta for 20 years. He says the disqualification of Patrick Brown really smells. He says it comes after he posted much higher membership numbers than expected, making him competitive with Poilievre. And the case against him, indeed, the whole process is shrouded in mystery. I thought it was interesting that Brian Mason chimed in on that. But what does this say in your mind about the party that you're seeking to lead?
Well, I would certainly say it taints this leadership. And we shouldn't be giving gifts to political adversaries in the Liberals and NDP. If we don't run a fair and free election, that is easy ammunition for other political parties. We shouldn't have coronations in the Conservative Party. We should have fiercely fought, fair, open, transparent leadership elections.
A lot of people, you mentioned Michelle Rempel-Garner. I don't have to tell you she's a popular MP in this part of Canada, obviously out of Calgary. And she, for all intents and purposes, stayed out of the last couple Conservative leadership races. She didn't really plant a flag, at least if memory serves correct. She did with you. And it kind of surprised some people. She then left your campaign to talk about considering the leadership of Alberta's United Conservative Party. Pretty interesting race here in our home province. I mean, whoever wins becomes premier, right? And then she decided not to do that. And then people are going right now, kind of what's going on with Michelle Rempel-Garner. Did she use the UCP thing as a distraction to get herself extricate herself out of your campaign? Who knows? What was your message to Michelle Rempel-Garner to convince her to endorse you? It was a big one in Western Canada. And what's going on present day? Have you had conversations with her recently?
So Michelle's a friend, and even after she went to look at the UCP leadership, she stayed on as a supporter and an advisor. I agreed with a lot with Michelle. I think that's why she joined the campaign. We both talked about how the Conservative Party was on the wrong side of the gay marriage vote in 2004. And if we don't have a leader that participates in pride parades, it sends a message that we don't welcome all Canadians. We felt very firmly that when there were some Conservatives that wanted to revisit issues like conversion therapy, they didn't reflect where Canada was today or what was right. And so whether it's on supporting the LGBTQ2 community or fighting Islamophobia or calling out hate and intolerance, there's a lot that I really agreed with Michelle on. I thought she's a modern, inclusive Conservative that represented some of the best the party had to offer. And it's why I was privileged to work with her. And for Conservatives who want to push her out, she's exactly the type of person and politician and MP that you want in your caucus. She speaks to that larger audience of Canadians that too often the Conservative Party doesn't appeal to.
With this recent reversal of Roe v. Wade down in the United States Supreme Court down in the U.S., I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the background. It's got people wondering what's going to happen here in Canada. There's an MP out of Alberta by the name of Arnold Viersen that as soon as his plane had touched down in Alberta, he was there live from his phone to his supporters talking about what a win it was, what a great decision it was. It's a great day. And some of the socially conservative or right-wing conservative flank in Canada have been talking about what might happen in Canada, how Canada's Supreme Court could be stacked. UCP leadership candidate Brian Jean, former leader of the Wild Rose Party, was musing about that the other day, and it lit a fire under a whole bunch of people. Do you believe in the context of the SCOTUS decision, the reversal of Roe v. Wade, that the identity or direction of the Conservative Party in Canada is more important now than it has been in 50 years?
I think it's very important for whoever wants to be Conservative Party leader not to give vague answers on this. We need to be clear and unequivocal. Let me be clear, and as I was when this decision was announced, that I support a woman's right to choose, and I will protect the reproductive rights of women in Canada. I don't think the Conservatives can afford to be vague on this. And when Pierre Poilievre was asked that question 15 different ways and he couldn't answer it, it's alarming. And then finally he gave out an answer that he supports freedom of choice. What does that even mean? Just say you support a woman's right to choose. It's these politicians that try to play both sides that I think frustrate Canadians. And so, yes, I believe it's important that the new Conservative leader is very clear on this. I think there are some Canadians who are concerned that there is a segment in the Conservative Party that wants to revisit this.
Let me ask you this in closing. I know you've got to go. We appreciate your time this morning. A lot of people talk about this big tent idea, these united Conservative parties. You see provincially in Alberta, the questions are there. Can this party stay united? Jason Kenney tried, but you've got the different factions. And then the same thing with the federal party as well. People talk about the big tent. Did you have concerns, or do you have, if we're being honest here, were you to become leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, how would you work to keep this party united and attract new members under a big tent when, for all intents and purposes, people are looking at it going, we're not sure if this is actually possible?
So my approach was going to be a little bit different. I was going to say very clearly that any party I lead will welcome everyone. Doesn't matter who you love, where you're born, the color of your skin, what God you worship. We were going to be a big tent party. But if there were individuals that wanted to play footsie with hate or intolerance, then they didn't have a place in a party that I led. If you want to go on whatever the hate of the day, whether it's anti-Semitism, gay bashing, Muslim bashing, whatever the racism or the intolerance of today is, if there's members of my caucus that wanted to engage in that vial, I would have said, no, I'm not going to sign your nomination papers. I don't believe a modern, inclusive Conservative Party can have any home for that. And so I would have taken an approach that would have been very clear, direct, and unequivocal that we were going to be a big tent Conservative Party.
Last question for you, Patrick. Obviously, people know the mayor of Brampton. You've had a long political career at all three levels of government. 5 councillors, city and regional councillors, issuing a statement yesterday, which is probably a tough one for you to read, that basically says our great city is in the national news for all the wrong reasons because of you. They say because of Patrick Brown. They say that the city needs a new leader after a clear and alarming pattern of behavior, they're calling it. They're urging you not to seek another term. What's your on-the-record response to these councillors? And assuming, let's just say hypothetically, assuming this appeal doesn't work in this leadership race, what does your political future look like in the municipal context?
So first of all, I'm not going to make any decisions until we know what's happened with this federal decision. We have a split council in Brampton. I'm sure you've seen those in Alberta as well. And there's a side of council that I support that I believe is doing the right thing, following the advice of the city clerk and the city solicitor. And the side that criticized me yesterday, I've called out in the past. There was the councillor that was speaking, Councillor Dillon, was found guilty by the Integrity Commissioner for allegations of sexual harassment that were recorded. He appealed the decision to the courts. The Integrity Commissioner's verdict was upheld. And then when I was away during the leadership campaign, they fired the Integrity Commissioner. And I believe that's wrong. There's 5 of councillors that want this revisited. We don't believe she should be fired for doing her job. She has now sued the councillors that fired her. And so that's what's caused this heated debate at City Hall, but I believe standing up for the Integrity Commissioner for doing her job, that those of us councillors that are very clearly saying that are on the right side of history.
Patrick Brown, thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wishing you all the best moving forward. That's Patrick Brown. Obviously, what do you call him at this point? I think you still call him leadership candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada, although technically at this point, at the time we're talking right now, his status is disqualified, but we'll see. And again, I know I keep returning back to this, but I always think it's significant who somebody hires as their lawyer.
100%.
Right? I mean, Patrick Brown didn't go in his phone and text his buddy from high school.
I don't think he's
has an insurance law practice, and then he just asked him to use his letterhead because he went and got Marie Hennen. Yeah. And so I'd be curious. It's not a guaranteed win.
Yeah.
You kind of wonder too with situations like this. I don't have the stomach for politics, right? I mean, it's just the opportunism. People see an opening and they just pounce. You're getting people behind the scenes. You're getting stabbed in the back.
Sure.
That kind of a thing. But as of right now, he's disqualified. Let's say that the resolve shown by his legal team resonates with the Conservative Party. I don't think it's going to. I do not think that, and this is just my gut instinct. I don't have any insider knowledge of anything. I don't have anybody in my ear telling me stuff from behind the scenes, behind closed doors. It's just my gut instinct. I feel like when a decision like this is made, the decision is made, and the party will live with the consequence. And you may say this is a stain on the leadership race, and members of that party will probably say, we don't give a flying fuck. You know what I mean? We want Pierre Poilievre in. We're going to get Pierre Poilievre in.
At any means necessary. And
then we'll just see what happens in the general election. We'll see, Mr. Poilievre against whoever's going to lead the Liberals into the next election, whether it's Justin Trudeau or whomever else, assuming it's Jagmeet Singh there for the NDP, and the other parties can sort themselves out. But if you're Patrick Brown, let's say that your appeal is successful, obviously you want back in that race, but what does it look like then?
Mm-hmm.
This could be a big recruitment tool for him as well. Let's say he's back in, and then let's say people are watching this. I'm taking a look at our live chat right now. I love this from Emma. Emma's just tuning in, so she's a little bit behind the chat. She won't hear me read her comment until 15 minutes from now. Emma, what's up? Good morning. She says, I'm just tuning in. He got Marie Hennen? She goes, dang. Sharon makes a very good point, and Sharon's right. They've already printed all the ballots, right? She says his name is still on the ballot. True. Mm-hmm. What does this look like moving forward for the Conservative Party? How valid do people perceive the leadership result? Does anybody actually care? Is that even relevant?
I tell you, it stinks, Ryan. And I like Karen's message on the YouTube chat here as well. She said, I can see why Pierre wanted him out. I can too. He speaks clearly. He doesn't hide his opinions. I don't agree with a lot of his policies or whatever, but at least he's not hiding anything, and he seems level-headed. So, of course, with all that, you'd want him out of the race.
How about this comment? Jill says, I've never been a big fan of Patrick Brown, but if you judge him by his enemies definitely make him look good. That's a good point. If you judge somebody by who their enemies are, you might find more common ground with folks than you might expect.
Yeah.
So we'll see where this goes. We welcome your comments. We'll talk to Dr. Duane Bratt about this in probably 5 minutes or so. We've asked him to join us. Oh, look at this. He's already ready and rocking and set to go. That's awesome. Dr. Duane Bratt, in just a quick second, let me make sure that we mention the sponsors, our partners here at Real Talk that ensure that these conversations happen, these important conversations. These are the decision makers. And, of course, we'll talk about British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's resignation as well with Dr. Bratt. St. Albert Dodge, Sherwood Dodge, that's where I picked up the Dodge Ram 1500 that I'm driving right now. Absolutely love it. Perfect for summer, whether it's golf bags or coolers or groceries or just the other day, John, hay bales for a little backyard aesthetic installation. Hay bale, no problem. The Dodge Ram does it all, and I'm loving this Longhorn trim. It's kind of an interesting choice for the urban cowboy like me, but it has that sort of a Western vibe to it. Hey, that's just one truck. You can view the full Ram lineup at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. Their service department, equally proud of their ongoing customer relationships, same as the sales side. You can find them, link to their website, shop online or in person, depending on your comfort level, under the sponsors tab on our website, RyanJesperson.com. Our friends at Friesen Brothers want to remind you today is day 2 of a 2-day blazing savings event. You can find all the details on their website at Friesen.com. You can also learn more about their Heat Up the Grill initiative. You know, the Friesen Brothers butchers are so proud of the tradition of putting real Alberta beef, pork, chicken, turkey, and of course, plant-based products as well. John's been telling us about some of the awesome stuff you've been throwing on the grill in the last little while. Friesen Brothers, the go-to for grillin' season. 16 locations across the province of Alberta. Alberta grown, Alberta owned. Our friends at Kubi Energy want to remind you right now, this is an incredible opportunity. If you've been humming and hawing about installing solar, whether it's your house, your cabin, your cottage, your Quonset, your barn, maybe it's a big industrial warehouse, who knows? Whatever your scenario is, you know, the federal government just recently announced a $40,000 interest-free loan for homeowners in particular who want to install solar. Okay, so you can learn more at kubienergy.ca. Just click on their blog link and you'll find the details there. $40,000 interest-free plus a $5,000 rebate from the federal government. And if you happen to live in our home city of Edmonton, another $4,000 on top of that. The point is, it's becoming more and more sensible to go solar. And Kubi Energy does the best installs in the country. Again, you'll find them online. Get a free quote today at kubienergy.ca. Once you have your solar panels installed, you're going to want to make sure that you're with Park Power, signed up for them to provide your internet, electricity, and natural gas. When your solar panels give you more juice than you need, Park Power buys it back, paying you more than any of the big providers. Don't forget the promo code 2022-REALTALK gets you $70 off your first bill at parkpower.ca. And when you're on the website, scroll down to their blog. You'll be able to find their latest post about the Government of Alberta's electricity rebate program. They're concerned because they're seeing different phishing scams related to that rebate program. They don't want you to be taken for a ride, and they've got a great post there under the consumer info category on their blog at parkpower.ca. Our next guest, a great friend of the show, known him for a long time and have always appreciated his insights on political matters, municipally, provincially, federally, and internationally. Dr. Duane Bratt out of Calgary's Mount Royal University, a professor of political science, kind of steers the ship down there in that faculty, as a matter of fact, joining us live this morning. It's nice to see your face. How's your summer been to this point? You've got a kind of a nice, cheery, for people on the podcast, I'll describe it. You got this very summery vibe going on with your shirt. Not quite a Hawaiian shirt, but you look like the personification of summer. Have you guys been getting drowned out in Calgary like we have up here?
Oh yeah. It's been pretty wet. I've been doing a lot of traveling, but I'm going to be in Calgary the rest of the summer. This will actually only be on until this afternoon when the Stampede season starts. So I thought about putting on the cowboy hat, but that was a bit early. If you were to do this tomorrow, I would have the full boots, hat, bolo tie ready to go.
Yeah, hey, there's been kind of a funny thing going on. I mean, I'm going to get really sort of new. I'm going to go into one of these sort of like niche areas on Twitter recently where people have been You've got the Stampede lovers. I mean, I grew up in Calgary, born and raised, didn't miss a Stampede for like 30 years. And then you've got the people that sort of look down their nose on the Stampede, and they're calling it cowboy cosplay, which I don't find to be inherently offensive. It is cowboy cosplay, but something happens if you've never been in Calgary, if you don't live in Calgary for the Stampede, something happens. The entire city essentially puts everything on hold for 2 weeks. There's a lot of, I know we don't want to focus on this part, but basically binge drinking, partying, a lot of business deals being done, and the politicking, Duane, at the Calgary Stampede.
But I spend a bit of time at what I call political stampede.
Yeah.
And there are years I never actually get on the grounds. My wife loves going to the grounds, and she often drags me down. But unless I've got family or friends visiting, rarely do I end up on the grounds. But there's so much other activity around the city, from the Stampede breakfast to the bar scene. There's a lot of activity, and so I call this political stampede. So later today is the U.S. Consulate Independence Day party, which, no, it's not July 4th. They never hold it on July 4th. They always hold it the day before the parade, and that's followed by a couple of, government relations firms, throwing big bashes on. And you throw a couple leadership races in the mix. Yeah, there's a lot of politics going on.
Yeah, you can tell who wants to win, who wants to win Western Canadian political offices by who's flipping the most pancakes. That's for sure. Are you on the invite list to W. Brett Wilson's annual party where Pierre Poilievre is going to be speaking?
Yeah, no, I am not. I guess that got lost in the mail.
I thought that was pretty interesting, actually, that Pierre Poilievre's not attending the Western Standard, as you know, but for the benefit of our audience, is a debate of the leadership candidates and of the higher profile one. I mean, Mr. Brown. We'll talk about Patrick Brown in just a second. He obviously won't be there, but Pierre Poilievre's a no-show at the Western Standard debate, instead electing to go to the Brett Wilson garden party. Does that surprise you, or do you think that the Poilievre camp is looking at the prairies and going, we already got those in the bag?
Oh, yeah, I think so. But it is a bit of a snub that it's occurring at the same time. You're in the same city. Your supporters support, the Western Standard and the debate about, Western interests. And instead you're going to a garden party, with a billionaire. That doesn't sound very populist to me, but there's probably a good reason why the Poilievre team is doing that.
We just talked to Patrick Brown, as you know, about 20 minutes ago. His lawyer, his legal team, steered by Marie Hennen, sending a couple letters to the Conservative Party to context they're involved in the leadership race, essentially saying he's not down and out. We demand that you keep all your correspondence. We're going to be appealing this decision. We do not accept this decision to disqualify. Pundits, the majority of them, are saying that this is a really bad look for the Conservative Party of Canada. As John and I were just talking about, I'm not sure that anybody within the party cares about whether or not it's a bad look. I think they care most about getting the leader in that they want to go toe-to-toe against the Prime Minister next federal election. How are you wrapping your mind around this? Does the scenario stink? Do you have enough information to form an opinion?
So several things. I've always said that internal party politics, whether leadership races or nomination races, are the dirtiest and nastiest politics there is, because it's being done within. There's no independent arbiter. Now, we do have, thankfully now, Elections Canada or Elections Alberta dealing with the finance stuff, which is at the heart of this dispute. But in general, you could go through all sorts of parties and all sorts of different races over the years and see some real shenanigans going on here. Having said that, this idea about using the courts are very reluctant to intervene into this. And all you have to do is go back to the Manitoba PC leadership race that chose the premier, Heather Stefanson, and her challenger is fighting in the courts, and the courts threw it all out. And in fact, part of the application that Brown made to run, he had to sign off saying, there was no court of appeal, that the decision of the leadership executive committee has the final say. And this isn't just Ian Brody, the chair of that, right? This is 15 people. And now we start to get onto the merits of the case. So with those two caveats right off the bat, one is I don't think his legal standing is going to work, no matter how high profile a lawyer he has. The second is party politics, internal races tend to be nasty and dirty to begin with.
How bad could this hurt the party, Duane? Like, does it matter?
That's right. This idea that the fix was in and they were just waiting for an opportunity or creating this opportunity, this puts a stench on the race. If they wanted the fix to be in, they wouldn't have allowed him to run in the first place. Just as the United Conservative Party isn't allowing Ross Sherman to run, for their leadership, right? You do it right off. You don't do it now. You don't do it after people have been raising money because it looks bad. You've got people, and you show Brian Mason immediately jumping to Brown's defense because they don't like Pierre Poilievre, right? And I did have to chuckle when Brown was describing Poilievre as the establishment candidate. Poilievre is running a very effective campaign. I do call him the front runner. And he is most likely to win, and this helps him even more. But he is very narrowly casting. If you were to think about, Andrew Scheer or Stephen Harper or Aaron O'Toole, this is a very different approach. So to call that the establishment, that is quite interesting. And something that never came up in your interview, Brian, was his departure as Ontario PC leader. Patrick Brown has a sketchy background. Let's say ethical missteps right and left. The trigger of him being removed as Ontario PC leader was a series of sex allegations. But then once those came out, there was a piling on about other financial dealings that he's had, including how he won the Ontario PC leadership in the first place and how his campaign signed up all of those members and was able to basically run an insurgent, come from behind campaign. So I look at Patrick Brown's background, I look at his track record, and this is not just, oh my God, I'm shocked. Had they done this to a Jean Charest, that would have been a bit different. But we'll wait and see. And it was a split decision, 11-6, I believe it was, to expel him. But it was 15-0 to send it to Elections Canada. Brown did admit, what some of these allegations are, but he tended to minimize it. Obviously, the party is quite concerned. And Brown also emphasized, I sold 150,000 memberships, which is a lot. It's really a lot. But he forgot to mention that Pierre Poilievre sold 300,000.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. I do think it's relevant where the memberships are sold. But
absolutely. And same with Brown. There has been some analysis done, that Brown's is largely focused in the greater Brampton area and a handful of ridings. What is missing, and Poilievre's is Western Canada and rural Ontario. What is missing is Atlantic Canada and Quebec, and we'll have to see what Jean Charest is doing. But this is not good news for Jean Charest.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask you. And I described the Charest campaign yesterday as a whimper, and then after I wondered, was that a little harsh? But no, I stand by it. I think I'm actually surprised at how, quite frankly, ineffective the campaign has been. What does this mean for Jean Charest? Anything? I mean, is this kind of a two-horse race that just became one?
I think Charest's path to victory was a strong Patrick Brown, where his second votes would go to Charest. Well, now Brown's out, and yes, his name's on the ballot. But if you've signed up all of those people to vote for you, and you're no longer in the race, are you going to vote? So forget about putting, Charest second. They're not going to put Brown first. And I think that greatly minimizes Charest's campaign. You look at the Charest camp response to this, and it was like they were trying to cut the middle ground. They didn't come out and condemn Brown for being kicked out. They didn't condemn the party or blame Poilievre for it. It was kind of, oh, this is very serious. Well, yeah, it's very serious when you throw out, one of the top three candidates.
I don't mean to bury the lead here this morning. I appreciate you taking on the Patrick Brown story. It's relevant to Canadians. People care about it.
Well, you had Brown on.
We had Brown on. It makes sense to talk about him out of the gates. But Boris Johnson resigns as the Prime Minister of Britain. And Duane, in the last 48 hours, let's say, at least since Tuesday, losing 50 government members to resignation. That is huge. How are you wrapping your mind around this development?
So to show my professionalism to you, Ryan,
Okay.
I had a split screen going on. If you could see my setup here, I've got a laptop, I've got an iPad, and I had the Boris Johnson press conference on one screen and you on the other. But when Brown came on, I muted Boris to listen to the interview because I knew I was going to be asked about it. Okay, but thankfully, Boris got through his statement before the interview, so I was able to see all of that. And the rest of that, that's just color commentary.
Yeah, he basically said he regrets he wasn't able to finish his. I'm only reading it as we're talking, and you have my full attention, Duane, but I'm also reading. I'm reading the closed captioning here just off camera, so I've been able to see. Yeah. He says he regrets he wasn't able to complete his full term. He says he vows to support the next leader. He's going to stay on until that next leader is chosen. How did it get to this point? Boris Johnson, to me, I read a lot into, like, maybe this is sort of an elementary type observation, but I thought the way he walks, the way he wears his hair, it sort of, to me, characterized his approach to politics. Like, he sort of really didn't give much of a rip about what his critics thought. He felt emboldened, he felt confident, until all of a sudden it just evaporated, and he essentially lost his own party. And in the sports context, he lost the room.
Absolutely fascinating character.
Yeah.
When you look at the history of Boris Johnson, he has screwed up so many different times in so many different ways. And he's been fired from this job and fired from that job, and over plagiarism and lying. And he seems to fall upwards. Every time he loses his job, he gets a better job. So he gets fired as a columnist. Then he becomes an editor, and then he becomes, he screws that up and he becomes mayor, and then he becomes an MP, and then he gets kicked out, and then he becomes Minister of Foreign Affairs, and then he becomes Prime Minister. So I don't know where he goes from here, but Boris Johnson's career has been screwing up and getting promoted as a result of that. Yeah. But to try to explain, first, let's just take a step back here. The first two resignations are always the toughest because someone's got to step out first. After that, it just became a landslide. And so 1932, 10 ministers resigned in Britain, in the depths of the Great Depression. Yesterday, and it's tough with the time difference, so I may be adjusting days, it was 60. Right. So that shows just the historical significance. More ministers resigned under Boris Johnson in his less than 3 years as prime minister than under the 11 years of Margaret Thatcher or the 10 years of Tony Blair. So that's how historically significant this is. But think about this, right? He wins a massive majority, the largest majority in British history 3 years ago. Seems to wipe labor off the map. And then, COVID hits. Britain does very poorly with COVID. And then the personal scandals start. The parties, not one party, but it seemed to be like all sorts of parties were going on that Boris Johnson was having while dealing ineffectively with COVID. So that was one set of scandals. And he faces a non-confidence vote and narrowly survives a non-confidence vote. And then the scandals just pick up. And now it wouldn't be British politics without a sex scandal. So his deputy whip had serious accusations, credible accusations of being very drunk at a private club and sexually assaulting young men. And Boris Johnson seemed to be shocked by this. And yet his whole track record in the past, he had been briefed about this guy. He had done this repeatedly, get drunk and go after young men. And Boris gave him a job, gave him an important job. And then lies about it, right? So one of the ministers yesterday is live on television saying, I don't know what is worse, his political judgment or his honesty. And you had the very surreal thing of the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is the finance minister in British terms. They always have fancy terms. He's being interviewed. And while the interview is going on, his colleagues are resigning. And so the interviewer is breaking into the monologue going, what do you have to say about this guy? And what do you have to say about this woman?
There was a ticker. It was a ticker during the interview, and they were just announcing more and more.
Yeah, there was a professor of political science. He was running this graph, And he had to keep updating the graph.
Yeah.
Because as every minister started to resign, and then it was like, well, some of these are parliamentary secretaries, and some of these are like assistant deputy whips, but it was still a large count. So, yes, a lot of this is about Boris Johnson. But I think the fundamental problem here, the original sin, is Brexit. Brexit has destroyed British politics, the British economy. Brexit has now taken down 3 prime ministers. It took down David Cameron, who was stupid enough to have a referendum on this. It took down Theresa May, who tried to get a deal, but recognized just how traumatic this deal would be. Then Boris Johnson, who's, leave means leave. Let's get Brexit done. That I think is the real issue here in British politics. It has divided the British Conservative Party. It has divided the British public. It has damaged the British economy. So we can talk about Boris Johnson as being a character, and oh my God, as a political character, you couldn't invent a guy like him. But at the end of the day, I put it down to the root causes of Brexit. And you can trace a line to David Cameron's decision to have that referendum and how that referendum played itself out to BoJo.
So what does this mean? I mean, like in the context of Brexit and the EU, and I mean, maybe some bridges have been burnt, but what does this mean for the next leader of this party? I mean, as Boris Johnson says, he'll stay on. He says he'll support the new leader. He'll stay on until the new leader's chosen, et cetera. But I mean, is the impetus here that there needs to be an entirely new direction, that maybe this leader's going to go back to the people of Britain and talk about a redo, a reconsideration? Like, what does the next 2 years look like, do you think?
Well, and I mean, Boris Johnson didn't win that massive majority simply because he promised to get Brexit done. It was the collapse of the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn, who was a horrible leader and an anti-Semite. And Johnson took advantage of that. Well, Labour's coming back. Some of those seats that Johnson won in that big election, he has subsequently lost in by-elections. But whoever becomes the new prime minister, the new leader of the Conservative Party, they do have time. They've got another 2 years. But they have got a huge party unity problem, and they have a national unity problem. Scotland is likely to have another referendum on separation, and this time it may succeed because the Scots would like to rejoin the European Union. You've got a problem with Northern Ireland, which seemed to have been simmered down, because of the Good Friday Accords in the late 1990s. It now is coming back up again because of this hard border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland as a result of Brexit. So Brexit, it could have an impact on the future of Britain as a unified country, let alone who the future leader of the Conservative Party is. And that's why I say that is the fundamental sin. That's the original sin here.
A lot of people are today drawing direct lines between Alberta Premier Jason Kenney's resignation and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's resignation. And maybe it takes a bit of a stretch, and maybe it's a bit of a loose or lazy
it doesn't
comparison.
take much of a stretch. I was making those comparisons.
Okay, take it and run with it.
I mean, think about this, right? You have a leader, comes in, wins a massive majority 3 years ago, then is dealt COVID, and has some problems with COVID, including having, a boozy dinner with COVID restrictions going on. Then there is, internal challenges within his own party, and gets forced out by his own party. The difference would have been here, Brian, is if after that leadership review on May 18th that Kenney narrowly won, if Kenney said, I won, I'm staying. Because that's what Johnson did with his non-confidence. And what happened after that? Ministerial resignations, caucus dissent, on. And the final parallel is Johnson's not leaving yet. He's going to stay until the fall, just like Jason Kenney. So there are an awful lot of parallels between the two. And I don't think it's a stretch to make those comparisons. I don't think Boris Johnson is using the Kenney playbook. I don't think Kenney is using the Boris Johnson playbook. But if you're sitting in Alberta, as opposed to any other jurisdiction in the country, you just can't ignore the parallels here on so many different files.
We've hit the time we've asked you to stay, but I have to ask you just quickly about, or take as much time as you like, this United Conservative Party leadership race in our home province of Alberta. Obviously, Premier Kenney has, for all intents and purposes, resigned, although he's also staying on until a new leader's chosen. The race, the field is interesting. I mean, no disrespect to any of the candidates, but there's not kind of like this heavy hitter star power kind of a scenario. There are recognizable names, to be sure. Brian Jean, Danielle Smith, Travis Taves, the finance minister, Rebecca Schultz has been on the show. You've got Leela here, familiar to many people, Rajan Sani, who talked to us about it, and others. But there's not sort of real, like there's not a Pierre Poilievre in the mix. There's not one that I think has like 5 times the support of anybody else or anything like that, at least not at this point. Your observations, still with some runway in this race. What are you paying attention to?
Oh, I think that's correct, because they've had the front runner savior in the past.
Yeah.
You know, they had the Jason Kenney, they had the Jim Prentice, coming in. This is not the field that will be there in a couple of weeks, because on July 20th is when they have to submit their application and the first $50,000 of their entry fee. So there's 10, 11 names now. I think by late July, it will narrow to 4 or 5. Taves is already in. He's already sent in his check. He's already got his application approved, which is unfortunate that that it will narrow, because it is a diverse field. Now, I know there are people who hate all conservatives and say, well, the only good conservative leader would be Rachel Notley.
Right.
I'm not one of those, right? If you look at it, the contrast between Brian Jean and Leela here and Danielle Smith and Travis Taves, that's pretty darn diverse, in their viewpoint, their experience, their platform. And so I think it makes for a very interesting race, except that's not going to be the pool of people. That pool is going to narrow to 4 or 5. Taves is in. I think Jean will be in. I think Smith will be in. Then the question is, the Rebecca Schultzes and the Rajan Sanis and the Leela here, is there room for all 3 of them? I don't think there is. I don't know who is going to survive this sort of pre-leadership race, but it's going to be tough for any of them. I am a bit disappointed that so much of the campaign right now has been about revisiting COVID restrictions, and Travis Taves intervened in that yesterday, and about separatism and autonomy, as opposed to dealing with inflation, that Premier Kenney seems to be dealing with, but not the leadership candidates, which is a whole other kettle of worms.
Yeah, and we could talk. We could talk about federal politics and how Chrystia Freeland, finance minister, has really been struggling with communicating on inflation. And her comment the other day to, people can hate me if they want. It was kind of like, everybody's having a tough time navigating that one. I'll be honest with you, Duane. I didn't see. If you're just joining us, Dr. Duane Bratt, our guest, I didn't see what Travis Taves. He's Alberta's finance minister. What did he say about revisiting restrictions?
So he was quoting the federal health minister, who was talking about getting boosters for vaccines, and that 2 shots were insufficient. And Taves put out a meme that says, enough is enough. We need bodily autonomy. We can't have Ottawa tell us what to put in our bodies or not, which seemed to be direct criticism of getting boosted, which had been the position and still is the position of the Alberta government, that they should be taking those positions.
Well, and so doctors and scientists.
Yeah, exactly. So I was a bit taken aback that Taves has decided to go down the road of the Jean and the Smith campaign by doing that. Is that really where we're going here? That no, I will take 2 shots. That's fine, but no more than 2. I'm sorry. That's where I draw the line. Yeah,
I'm just trying to. Oh man, Duane,
think about the inflation issue, Ryan. No of the leadership candidates are really talking about the budget surplus or the cost of living for Albertans. They're dealing with these side issues right now. And you've got Jason Kenney making policy decisions in a caretaker mode, right? He's talking about natural gas rebates coming in October, extending the electricity rebates. So you've got these 2 parallel systems going on, of an active premier, not a caretaker premier, on one side, and a leadership race going on over here. And what happens when they directly clash?
Yeah, we're going to be talking to Danielle Smith next Thursday. I'll look forward to that conversation. She's said a lot of things like this Alberta Sovereignty Act that lawyers are saying is bullshit, quite frankly. And then she said that I think her first order of business. Danielle and I, former colleagues on radio, we've had a lot of challenges.
Oh yeah, I've been with you.
I'm looking forward. Yeah, you've sat with us on the election desk. I remember when Jason Kenney won. We were at the Big Four building together. Duane, I'll never forget that. Me and my interesting wardrobe choice of a tan 3-piece suit and a pink bow tie in Conservative headquarters as the blue pickup truck rolled in with Alberta's new premier. But I digress. I'm curious to ask Danielle about that. She says her first order of business as premier would be to apologize to pastors who were jailed for refusing to shut down their in-person church services during COVID. It's not, to me, and you've just alluded to this, I'm repeating what you just said, but in this leadership race, I haven't seen a candidate come out and inspire people and say that this is what the future of Alberta looks like. Here's how we're going to attract families to live here. Here's how we respect the science, but here's how we believe we can be business friendly, and here's how we're going to get the economy. It just seems to be getting in the weeds on all these things about freedom and sovereignty, and quite frankly, Duane, it just looks like the majority, not all of them, but it looks to me like the majority of these candidates that want to be premier of Alberta are essentially campaigning to the truck convoy. Like, it just seems like that's who they're trying to reach.
Yeah, that is. And it was one thing to see Jean and Smith and Todd Lowen doing that. But Taves was sort of seen as the establishment candidate.
Steady Eddie.
Finance, but and then for him to start talking about this sort of stuff, I think is worrisome. Because they're appealing not to the broad set of the United Conservative Party, but a fringe of the United Conservative Party. And what does that mean for the rest of Albertans? Because this person isn't just going to be leader of the UCP. They're going to be premier for 6 or 7 months, and with all the powers that go with that. And so what does that entail? That is quite worrisome. To me about the state of politics, if that becomes the number one issue that you're facing with.
Yeah. Let me ask you, I know that political scientists hate this question, but who do you think is going to win the race? Who do you think the next premier of Alberta is?
I don't think you listened earlier, Ryan, when I said we don't even know who is in the race.
No, but come on, just answer the damn question. Just answer the question.
I can't tell.
No.
So when I talked about, the clear front runners of Jason Kenney and of Jim Prentice, sure, they were the front runners and they won, but so was Gary Marr and Jim Dinnick, and they didn't win. And so October 6th is the results will be known. I got that in my calendar because it's also my birthday. It's so we'll be celebrating with cake and election results. I really can't handicap this. It is too difficult to call. There is no clear front runner. It will go to multiple ballots. And do the people who are supporting Leela here support Travis Taves on the second or third ballot? Do the people supporting Rebecca Schultz go to Brian Jean? Who knows? And who knows who is going to be on that final ballot in a couple of weeks' time? So there's still a lot at play. So no, I don't know. My crystal ball won't tell me who is going to win. And even if it did, it would probably be wrong.
All right. Dr. Duane Bratt, it's always so good to have you on the show. And I'll say the feedback right now in the live chat, people love how you make politics and talk about it accessible to folks that are maybe just dropping in. They want to understand it. They want to know why it or how it matters to them. And that's right in your wheelhouse. We appreciate it. It's nice to see you again. And happy stampeding, pal.
Okay, I'll be thinking of you, Ryan, with the mini donuts and the beer.
Oh, yeah, there you go, pal. I've never met a bag of mini donuts I didn't love. That's for sure. That's Dr. Duane Bratt out of Calgary's Mount Royal University, a political scientist there. Make sure, and he steers the faculty, make sure that you give him a follow on Twitter at Duane Bratt. Mm-hmm. What's your midway go-to for like carnival food, midway food? What's the one thing that you look for?
I actually try to stay away from most of it. I don't want to get.
I try to get 8 hours of sleep and drink lots of water.
It's not a health thing or anything. It's just.
You just don't love it.
Carnival food just makes me feel my stomach just turn. Everything's fried and
that's the point.
Sugary and fatty and so I try to eat before I go to these things. Yeah, so.
Interesting. I feel like maybe we should put out a I recognize we're not coming to you from Cowtown, from the Stampede City. But as the Stampede prepares to kick off and Calgary essentially shuts down or ramps up, depending on your perspective, for the next couple of weeks, maybe an unscientific, unofficial Twitter poll we could put out on your favorite midway food.
Yeah.
Like you got those
They
little
were doing
donuts,
crazy stuff last
corn
year,
dogs.
like
Yeah, they do all the
crickets and weird.
Yeah.
I was just like,
Beaver tails are probably pretty popular. They're probably pretty high up on the list. Yeah, we're getting some, we're getting some comments here already.
I can see you're kind of dressing here for the Stampede. You've got the urban cowboy going on today.
I've got my jeans on today, ready to go. Well, you can take the kid out of Calgary, but you can, this was kind of interesting. I saw.
What did you call it today?
What's that? Cowboy cosplay?
Yes, that's exactly what you're.
That's not my phrase.
You're getting into it.
And I saw who was it? It was like some, I don't remember. It was one of the oil and gas advocacy groups. It was like Oil Sands Action, or I'd hate to get it wrong, but it was like one of them, and they were taking aim at somebody. I know I should have a better reference. I don't have it in front of me. It's off the top of my head, but somebody had referred to the Stampede as cowboy cosplay, and the Oil Sands group went after them like, look at you, trying to whatever. And then all the responses from people were like,
it was
well, it is.
It's a cute comment.
It is cowboy cosplay. It's not an insult. What are you telling me? All these people know how to saddle a horse? Not a fucking chance.
None of them.
None of them.
80% of them put those boots in the closet.
You telling me these
year.
people know how to fuel up a Dodge Ram? I don't think so.
Lariat?
As a matter of fact, no, that's Ford, pal.
Oh,
no,
sorry.
the Dodge is the Limited. Do you want the Ram Limited or the Longhorn? That's the one I'm driving.
That's the one you
the
got.
Longhorn. Yeah, Brenda says you got to get Dr. Bratt back on a round table, maybe
great.
with Supriya. Supriya's going to join us again tomorrow. Supriya Dwivedi's going to be on the show in her regular spot, which I'm really looking forward to.
I can't wait.
We'll get the Ontario perspective from her on what's going on with the federal race and all the other stories that are making news right now. I love this from Nicole that says she can't wait until the Boris Johnson movie is released. She said that would be unbelievable to watch, and I started thinking who would play BoJo. And I do have one.
I love when you call
the one that immediately came to mind. Do you have? I don't want to spoil you. I don't want to influence your gut instinct. Can you think of an actor that you think would be perfect to play Boris Johnson?
I don't know. Who are you thinking of?
Well, I mean, he's one half of the incredible duo, one of the greatest films of all time, if I may. I don't know if he's Harry or Lloyd. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Daniels, Dumb and
Jeff
Dumber.
Daniels is great.
Sort of struck me. I loved him in the Newsroom.
Newsroom.
So I've got a photo here. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see it in the podcast. You know it. It's a photo of him on the. You know the one after he drank the X-Lax or whatever it is. It just to me looks like there's kind of that resemblance there, and I feel like
Yes,
Jeff Daniels
but
could play anybody.
He's getting older. Jeff Daniels doesn't look like that anymore. I think Owen Wilson, if he gained 20 pounds, could do a good job as well.
Yeah, those are always interesting roles when people. Matt Damon did that once. He put on like 60 pounds to do a movie.
Yeah,
and I've always thought that would be a lot of fun. It'd be a lot of fun to be assigned to put on 60 pounds in a month or 2 months because I could crush signature stack burgers at Dairy Queen, for example. I mean, I could crush them. The problem would be at the end of the filming, I suspect I might just stay there.
Yeah.
Might just be the zone that I occupy. Audience members wondering, have we talked about, speaking of Michelle Rempel-Garner, and I don't really know what I was looking for in my question to Patrick Brown about her endorsement because, like, it was a curious one. And I don't mean offense to Patrick Brown at all. I'm not meaning offense to Michelle Rempel-Garner. I just think people thought she stayed out of the previous leadership races, at least the last two. What prompted her
to jump in,
to kind of put her neck out there with Patrick Brown, especially when it was more of a minority position, considering what conservative MPs were doing. And it's been kind of an interesting month or so. She has a lot of clout. She has a lot of influence. Is she on the outs with regards to where this federal Conservative Party is trending? And I saw that one of you had asked whether or not we had touched on her recent Substack. This was back on June 23rd, so this is a couple of weeks ago. You can check it out at michellerempelgarner.substack.com. I just made a big decision, reads the headline, and she talks about why she's not going to endeavor to become Alberta's next premier, why she's not going to seek the leadership of the United Conservatives, and it's worth your time. It's worth checking this out, michellerempelgarner.substack.com. It's an indictment on the party in Alberta, for sure. She talks about the dynamic of leadership and whether or not the party is united or not, whether or not it's governable. She talks about her experience in the federal party as well. She says, Andrew Scheer, Aaron O'Toole had every right to be optimistic that they could unite the team after their leadership races, but they didn't have much time prior to their general elections to address long-standing issues or to rectify the lack of independent processes needed to prevent or resolve internal conflict. And she says, and therein lies my reservation. Seeking a leadership role in a different party, but on what appears to be very similar circumstances. She says, with regards to the United Conservative Caucus in Alberta, she says, I don't know where all the sore spots are from. She says, but from what people have confidentially shared with me, there seems to be a lot of them, and they seem to be pretty fresh. She says she had more than 100 conversations with people close to the situation, and she said, my key takeaway was that the acrimony that led up to Jason's leadership review, Premier Kenney's leadership review, is still raw. She says, I'd need the team to instantly perform well with the weight of government already on its shoulders. She said there'd be precious little time to do this. We'd have to resist pressure, manipulation from special interest groups and lobbyists who would seek to take advantage of the instability of the situation. I mean, this is not a rosy picture that's being painted. She says, bluntly put, I'm concerned about what would happen if I stepped in as leader under the present internal UCP caucus dynamic, especially considering we'd need to govern while preparing for a rapidly approaching election. That's why she says, I'm not going to offer in this UCP leadership race, why she's not going to run. She said it's one of the hardest decisions she ever had to make. She says she wishes her colleagues in that government well. I mean, it's really, when you read something like that from an individual that has the clout that she has, that people look to her voice as like kind of,
things are
certainly one of the more prominent Western Canadian MPs, and certainly within the Conservative caucus, that fits. You can read it for yourself and let us know what you think. We always love your emails. I want to get to one of those in just a second. Hey, speaking of the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, John, it's not all signature stack burgers. There's a whole lot more, including their Blizzard lineup. You've got all the classics plus their summer specials, that cotton candy Blizzard I was telling you about. But today I want to talk to you about the chicken strip basket. I have it on good information. Most people don't know this. That of the different quick service restaurants, they are not all equal in the quality of their chicken. Oh no, Dairy Queen prides itself on having the best chicken, bar none. Go try it for yourself today. The chicken strip basket at the Dairy Queens in Northwest Edmonton, at Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and in Sherwood Park at Baseline Road. You make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. Say hi to them. We're proud to partner with those Dairy Queens. Hey, why don't we talk about this mayor of the mall yesterday? How cool is this? We've been telling you about this partnership between our friends at Local Environmental Services and West Edmonton Mall. Well, yesterday, Maya became the first ever mayor of the mall. This is a partnership with our good friends at Adaptabilities. Adaptabilities is creating success for life. And Maya's experience yesterday, a wonderful one, as she was able to enjoy VIP access to West Edmonton Mall attractions, shopping sprees at her favorite stores, and a night at Fantasyland Hotel. Mayor Maya celebrated yesterday as the first ever mayor of the mall. We love this community initiative, and from our team to the teams at Local Environmental Services and West Edmonton Mall, congratulations. And again, to Mayor Maya. Enjoy your term as the first ever mayor of the mall.
Don't let politics spoil you.
Oh, yeah, we should ask you about the next leadership race, eh? The next mayor of the mall. Did you read the Substack about the people running to be the next mayor of the mall?
I can only imagine the letters she's getting from people already.
West Edmonton Mall right now is like, can you please keep us out of this politics stuff?
Maya, the parking on level 1 is too low.
It's too expensive for that. I can't believe that. She's like, oh, the luster is low. Yeah, this is why you only want to be mayor for a day. You want to come in, make a couple proclamations, hand out a couple keys to the city, enjoy your shopping spree, and then get out of there before the rubber hits the road on the governance stuff. In all seriousness, though, we love that program, and congratulations on a successful community initiative. Our friends at Eden Landscaping want to remind you that, I hate to put it this way, but summer's going to be over before you know it. It's not too late right now to bring your outdoor space to life, whether that's a beautiful fire pit in the backyard, maybe it's an outdoor kitchen so you can welcome the kids over for an anniversary or birthday celebration. Maybe it's a retaining wall that desperately needs to be replaced, or a new water feature. You've seen them in magazines. They look incredible. Now you want one for yourself. You can get in touch with Mike and his team today by visiting landscapeedmonton.ca, a custom landscape builder with more than 20 years of on-the-ground experience in Edmonton and area. And before we get to our email of the day today, I wanted to also remind you that the team at Infinity Healthcare, they're hiring. They're looking for licensed practical nurses, customer care ambassadors. They're in the business of trustworthy, customized home care. So what does it mean to be an Infinity Healthcare ambassador? Well, you're the face and the voice of the brand. You're involved in communicating the value of their service to clients, which includes understanding specific needs that families have when it comes to home care. You know, when you invite a healthcare professional into your own home, there has to be a good fit. There has to be a trustworthy relationship. Certain sensitivities have to be observed, whether they're religious or cultural or language needs. That's where Infinity specializes. You can learn more about their personality matching service. Find out more about the business they provide today by visiting infinity-8.ca. Wanted to sign off with this email here from Jenny, and we believe, I'm going to be honest with you, we're still working on our Real Talk Roundtable for tomorrow. I do believe that it may be a conversation around women's health access in Canada and why this is an important conversation, perhaps now more than it has been over the last 50 years. And that may seem obvious and apparent, but we're always seeking different angles, different perspectives from real talkers, including Jenny, who took the time to send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. She says, I wasn't going to write. She says, I wasn't going to send you this email, Jespo, but I just can't seem to keep this from coming out. She says, this is kind of an ongoing thing for me if I'm being honest. She says, look, as a Jew living in a Christian hegemony, you have to assume that conversations around abortion access are going to primarily come from a Christian perspective. Jenny says, as much as that gets on my nerves, that's just a matter of numbers, right? But because of that, there's a significant chunk missing from the discussion around reproductive rights and access to care. This is an interesting angle. She says, a fetus under Jewish law is not a person until its head is delivered. Jewish law prioritizes the life and the well-being of the pregnant person, meaning that we're required to terminate a pregnancy that puts the mother's life or well-being at risk. And that includes mental well-being. In some of our most ancient Talmudic teachings, going back thousands of years, it's established that the penalty for harming a pregnant woman is more than the penalty for causing her to miscarry. Of course, there's disagreement on how that plays out in the real world, but the rabbinic rulings are what they are. Jenny says, so please, when these conversations are being had, please be very careful to not conflate religion with Christianity. Jenny says Christians have for thousands of years misinterpreted our Jewish texts to the point of insanity. Restricting access to reproductive care infringes on Jews' religious freedom. Thanks for considering my message, she says, signing off, Jenny. We sure appreciate that. That was not an angle that was on my radar. And our understanding of this issue, Jenny, is made more rich and more deep, more fulsome because of you taking a couple minutes to send us that message. You can email us anytime, talk@ryanjesperson.com. Once a month, we award our Real Talk Email of the Month. We'll send you one of our Real Talk studio mugs to say thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Coming up on tomorrow's show, as mentioned, we will have our weekly traditional Real Talk Roundtable as we take on issues that matter to you. And of course, Supriya Dwivedi is back. We're looking forward to having a chance to connect with her again. She won't mind talking. I don't think she'll mind me mentioning. She's just fresh off an eye surgery, so she's taken the time away from screens that she needed, which means we will have a ton to talk about. It all gets going at 10:30 Eastern tomorrow morning. See you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer, Josh Dunford. Technical producer, John Hicks. General manager, Katie Cook-Shivers. Account coordinator, Lawrence Derlego. Human resources, Lena Shepard. Website design, Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is the flagship property of Relay Communications Group Incorporated. All rights reserved. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.